everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we're going to have a special talk with Miss Sheila um, Portilla. Portilla?
Portillo.
And Sheila, we are going to be discussing high functioning autism, also known as Asperger syndrome. So, without further ado, let's begin. Okay, Ms. Sheila, I have some questions. I'll start with questions and maybe we'll just go into discussion from the questions.
Okay.
Okay, the first questions I have, what are some of the key differences on how Asperger's and ADHD affects a child's learning and behavior in school or even at home?
Okay. For Asperger's, they have a narrow focus or interest, whereas in ADHD, it's about their inattention that is the problem. And also, Asperger's also have difficulty in social cues, whereas this comes for ADHD in their impulsivity. They because of their impulsivity, they are not able to retain conversations because they are easily distracted. And also another one that's very significant for ADHD and Asperger's when it comes to their cognitive abilities, because uh, for some Asperger's, they have areas of expertise because of the narrow interest that they have. While in ADHD, they have the tendency to be able, not be able to focus, and thus this becomes an uh, disability for them or a challenge for them when they study.
Yeah, learning
Yeah,
challenge.
learning
Yeah,
challenge.
I find like when you're talking about behavior specifically, when a child, say with ADHD, has a meltdown, it's more of a situational issue. What happened in that situation? Whereas with a child with Asperger's or any form of autism, it's more of a sensory response. So
Yes.
that is, what I have found. The Once you take a child with ADHD out of the situation and help them to or adapt to that situation, they're usually fine. And it's really difficult to get somebody that has autism to to adapt to that environment when they're having a meltdown.
Yeah, it's true because for ADHD, the behavior challenges for them is about uh, how they're going because they describe a brain of an ADHD as that of a Ferrari. It is so it processes so fast, but it has a brake of a bicycle, which means because of the information overload, they get to be overwhelmed. And if they are in a situation like whereas in Asperger's, it's more of the situation they're in, as you said, the sensory part because it's
Yeah,
more sensory for them, while in ADHD, it's more of the environment influence of to the child with ADHD.
yeah, exactly. Okay, what's the second one? Um, how do the symptoms of Asperger's and ADHD overlap? How do they overlap?
Okay, they overlap primarily in three aspects. Number one is their social interaction, because for ADHD, they have difficulty listening or maintaining focus on the conversation because of they easily get distracted. But whereas in Asperger's, they have difficulty in understanding social cues. So it's different. And then the other one is on focus and attention. For ADHD, they have difficulty focusing on tasks because of their inattention. Whereas for Asperger's, they can hyper focus because of their narrowed interest. They can hyper focus on it, but the struggle is on switching from tasks.
Yeah,
And then
that's
lastly is about, yeah, the transitioning from one task to another. And the last one that's very different between the two is regarding impulsivity. For ADHD, they act before they think of the consequences. Whereas for Asperger's, they're less impulsive, but they may engage in behaviors where they don't understand the social appropriateness.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah,
the three aspects that's very uh, different between ADHD and Asperger's when it comes to social interaction, the focus and attention, and the impulsivity. That's where
yeah.
they
Yeah.
overlap.
Okay. Um, what common challenges do children with Asperger's face in a school environment?
For school environment, from what I encountered with the childrens I worked with, is that uh, there be they are commonly misunderstood and
Yeah,
judged because especially they are very straightforward. So their filters are very low. So they
they
can
don't have.
easily offend. So they don't know that they are offending somebody, and this can cause misunderstandings. And
Right.
also, this can be some reason for them to be misunderstood. So that's the challenge of Asperger's children in the school setting when it comes to their way of behaving. Because as we said, the hallmark of Asperger's is that they don't understand the social cues. They have
Yeah.
difficulty
Also,
understanding.
yeah. Also with sensory issues within the classroom, with the class being too loud, for example, and they have a meltdown because of the sound sensitivity. Teachers not really understanding what the issue is, what is the problem, and even if they understand the problem, not wanting to help the child. I've
Mhm.
encountered that a lot with kids that have Asperger's that are in the school systems, and the teachers not understanding or not wanting to understand. So that is also a big issue with them also wanting to move around a lot. That's another thing. Both Asperger syndrome and ADHD, they need to move. And because they need to move, there needs to be an accommodation in place for movement breaks. So that's also some of the situations that they also have at school.
Yeah, that's why it's important to educate and train teachers
Yeah,
if they are a school that caters for kids with needs like them.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
if the teachers are not equipped or they're not trained, they will not be able to understand how to give the right accommodation to the child. Like, for
yeah,
example, and if the teachers are not trained, the workaround to that would be parents explaining to the teachers the condition of the child and what has been done in the therapy so that there's an alignment or continuity of intervention even in the school, especially on cases and on issues of meltdowns or
yeah.
inattention or hyperactivity.
Yeah, the teacher should also be trained to recognize the signs because
Yeah,
sometimes the child is not diagnosed, but yet they're having these meltdowns, they're having, inattentiveness, they're getting out of their seats, moving around. So the teachers also need to be trained to recognize the signs of what's going on in the classroom so that they can report it to the parents, report it to the administration, so the child can be assessed.
yes. But in most cases, these are done already in the good thing now is that teachers, when they observe something on the child, because there is a parent teacher conference regularly,
Yeah.
they're
Mm,
able to communicate it to the parents that and make recommendations that perhaps these are the observations of most of the teachers of the child. So perhaps we would recommend that the child be evaluated. Now, it's now up to the parents if they will accept that the child has challenges, because in most
Yeah,
cases, for those who are not diagnosed and there are behaviors being seen in school, it's the acceptance of the parents that their child might have a condition that becomes the hindrance for the child to be diagnosed.
right, right. And usually when you see it at school, you're also seeing it at home. So
Yeah.
the parents need to accept that, okay, maybe there's something wrong, and we need to go and see what the problem is with our child.
Yeah, and usually what I explain to the parents is that the delay of the acceptance will only be more harmful for the child and will be more difficult for them for the intervention in the long run.
Right, exactly, 100%. Okay. How can a teacher distinguish between the behaviors related to HD and Asperger's in the classroom?
Okay, for ADHD, as you said earlier, both of them need to move. But for ADHD, they need to have something like of a
Mm-hmm.
fidget toy, or for some of them, their coping mechanism is doodling or
Yeah,
writing or
stimulate.
drawing. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then for Asperger's, it depends on their sensory challenges. For some, the accommodations that are given to them is that they are given weighted blanket on their lap to
yeah.
remind them that they have to be seated for the whole
Or holding
duration.
the desk.
Yes, and sometimes if they are sensitive, they have sensory challenges like in the noise, they are allowed to wear
Headphone.
noise canceling headphones.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it depends more on the sensory part on the Asperger's, whereas in ADHD, it's about controlling in the environment also.
yeah, yeah. Um, how does sensory processing affect learning for children with Asperger's or ADHD?
As I've said earlier, for ADHD, it's about the sensory overload or the distractions because of their inattention. Whereas for Asperger's, it's more intense on the sensory sensitivity. Another is for their coping mechanism because, as we just discussed, they seek sensory input for ADHD, like the fidget toys. Whereas for Asperger's, it's repeated behaviors, like, for
Yeah,
example, rocking or flapping their hands. And
yeah.
another one is, but both benefit in strategies that manage their sensory input,
Mhm.
creating sensory friendly environment. As we said, there should be accommodations given to the child. And another that is most effective is orientation and reorientation during class about what are the class rules, because
Yes, yes.
this will
Reminders, yeah.
prompt the child that, okay, this is the agreement between the teacher and the student, this is going to
Mm,
be what happened today. And also, uh, for Asperger's, they tend to lean more on predictability, so you need to give clear expectations to them because they are very they're they're on the rigid part. They're on the rigid part when it
yeah,
comes
they're
to that.
very rigid. Yeah,
So you have to really give them the orientation and also set contracts or agreements with them whenever there will be changes. Like, for example, okay, for this class, you can ask your questions at the end of the class. I will do the
right.
discussion, and then you can ask the questions at the end of the class. Or today we will just be discussions, no questions. If you have questions, ask me after the class outside. That way, the child would be able to have that mindset of what is expected of him or her. Whereas for ADHD, it's more of uh, giving the child the chance to have that focus. How can I focus? So giving him the opportunity to cope in order to focus.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, we have these kids that have vocal stems. Now, how would a teacher deal with kids that are having vocal stems in a classroom, because those, are very disruptive to the teacher?
Okay. Well, I know my daughter does that. She talks a lot because according to the therapist, she has hyperauditory. So she
Yeah.
needs to keep hearing sounds. And when there's
Mm-hmm.
no sound or there's no discussion in the class, she needs to speak. So we
Mm-hmm.
try to tell her that okay, if there's gonna be an activity and there's no lecture, then you can play a music. Because
Mm-hmm.
what I discovered is that when there is a stimulant in their auditory wise, they will refrain from speaking, from steaming
Yeah.
vocally.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Um, what are some of the teaching strategies that work best for students with ADHD?
For teaching strategies, first of all, you have to give the give the orientation to the child. Like for example, if it is a big task, you have to teach the child how to create it into small tasks so that
Yes.
there would be uh, if he needs to have a break before he continues, then it has to be given to him because they are very impatient. So
Yeah.
these are the things that adjustments that can be done in the classroom so that the
Mm-hmm.
child can finish a task or finish a project, especially if it is a lengthy one. That way,
Yeah.
learning for the child would be easier and more comfortable. And another one is also giving reminders of the time frame that they have to finish it. That way,
Mm-hmm.
the child will learn how to manage their time, like okay, in this time, like for example, they have the tendency to be fixated on a number. If in a test they cannot move to the next if they
Yes.
are if they cannot answer it, so the teacher
Now
need to
on,
teach. Yeah,
yeah,
so
if they
the
can't
teacher
answer that
needs
question, they
to.
won't move on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the technique there is to teach the child, okay, if you cannot answer that, move on because you have to finish it at this time frame. Having in mind that they need to finish it in the time frame, that's how the child will be able to adjust and transition for that
Yeah.
part. It's one thing that has been very effective tool that teachers utilize in most of the schools because they really observe that the child cannot move to the next number unless it's been the first one is
Yeah.
answered,
Yeah. When
and
I
they
was
get stuck.
teaching, like, I would walk around, and if I see a child just looking at one thing, I would just tell them, move on. Come back to that one later. Just move on to the
Mm,
next one. So most of the time they would actually do that and come back, to the ones they didn't
mm.
do. But I was always checking behind to make sure that there is no child just stuck on one question in an exam. Okay. How can teachers support students with Asperger's who may struggle with social cues?
Again, what works for them is reminders, orientation, reorientation. Again, they are all about what is expected of me. So every
Yeah.
time when they are in the classroom, for some in one of the schools where my kids studied before, they have a written rules in the classroom in the
Mhm.
blackboard, and before
Yeah.
the teacher starts class, all of them need to read all the reminders
Yeah. Yeah.
so that the child also will not feel that she's being singled out for the reminder,
Yeah.
because sometimes they might feel offended because especially when they're already in the high school
Yeah.
age. So
Yeah.
for it to be fair to everybody, the teacher usually asks, okay, everybody, let's read our rules so that everybody will be reminded. So that's one
Yeah.
that really works for Asperger's kids.
Yeah, yeah. And also trying to, I think, not just social cues, but socially, trying to maybe put them into small groups and, trying to get them to learn together so that they start to socialize with each other. So
Hmm.
that's more in the social aspect, but also I find that they learn social cues that way, reading between the line, watching their friends on how they interact. So this is another way that I think that it can be helped in the classroom.
Yeah, very much.
Um, what are some class accommodations that benefit both children with ADHD and Asperger's?
Okay. For movement, either they situate the child in a corner where they would be allowed to say, okay, that's the parameter where you can move. Okay, if
Yeah.
you need to stand up, you can stand up. Or for some, they give them a standing desk. For
Mm-hmm.
some, they give accommodations of standing desk. And for
Mm-hmm.
some, like here in the Philippines, in one of the universities here, they give weighted blanket for the kids.
Okay.
And then for sensory, they allow the kids to wear noise canceling headphones. So these
Yeah.
are some of the accommodations that are given to them. And then
Yeah.
another one is they have their own, they enroll in an individual education plan where
IEP.
they are given a wellness manager assigned to them, a guidance counselor assigned to them, or a university buddy or student buddy.
Yeah.
This way the
All.
child will be monitored.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Some of the common accommodations that I give when I have a child that has ADHD is first to put the child in the front away from distractions, and away from windows because looking out the window is a distraction. And also helping the child to break things down into smaller chunks in the assignment. Also, shorter homework assignments. Same context, but make it a shorter for them because their attention tends to go. And another thing is when the teacher sees that the child gets off task, just to gently remind them. Call their usually it's enough just to call their name. Muhammad, get back on task. Continue with your work. So these are some of the very very basic, and the movement break, of course. These are some of the very basic accommodations that I usually give for kids with both Asperger's and ADHD. Okay. Um, okay, we already said that one. How can educators manage meltdowns or emotional outbursts in the classroom? That's a very good question.
Yes, that's a very good question. And it entails uh, a dynamics. A dynamics, what I mean by dynamics is there should be a, a communication between the therapist, the parents, and the teachers. Why is this important? Because the therapist firsthand knows how to manage the child because the child is already having therapy with them. So they see the meltdown of the child and they know how to intervene for that. And this needs to be communicated to the parents so the parents can communicate it to the to the teachers so that they will be
Mhm.
equipped. One time I was in a conference of teachers and a specialist, and one of the teachers said, is it okay to give, because when she melts down, I tell her, okay, if you will stop crying, I will give you 5 points. And that the child will stop crying. And then the specialist say, no, don't do that, because that will not be beneficial in the long run, because the child will manipulate you to get you
Yeah,
high
that's
grades,
that's
especially
exactly what I was thinking.
especially if the child is an achiever. So that's the importance of
Yeah,
having a communication between the specialist and the teacher, so that the teachers will be equipped properly on how to intervene with the child. For some, they allow the child, or they assist the child if there's a meltdown. They assist the child to go to a breathing room. Like, for example, okay, you choose whether you go to the library or to the principal's office or the guidance counselor's office, so that you can breathe first. When you're okay now, and then you come back to the classroom. They're
yeah.
given that breathing space for them to calm themselves down, do some deep
Calming
breathing,
corner.
and if there's a guidance counselor there, help the child process how he or she is feeling, so that the child will have a space to express themselves freely, and be able
Mhm.
to, if not process, be able to at least express how they feel.
Right. Well, one of the things that I like the thing about the teacher wanting to give 5 points. Like you said, these types of things should be for positive behavior. So we don't want to reward bad behavior. That is the first thing that educators should know. When you do something like that, what are you doing? You are rewarding the negative behavior. So of course, she's going to learn how to manipulate that situation and give you more negative behavior as a reward for giving her those points. Okay.
Yeah,
One, it would depend on the danger of the situation, how dangerous the situation is, how violent the child is. Usually, I recommend that the child be removed from the situation completely because there's probably an overstimulation of some time. It could be, it could be situational for a child with ADHD. It can be sensory for a child with autism, Asperger's. So usually I recommend that they remove that child from the situation because all the kids coming together and trying to figure out what's wrong and all of that, it just adds more and more and more, and the child's going to get more and more and more agitated.
yeah,
So that is like one of the first steps. Remove that child from the situation. Don't make them feel like they're in trouble, though, at the same time. There should be some kind of quiet corner set up in some place. If you have a big classroom, of course, it could be a quiet corner in the classroom. A lot of schools make a quiet corner in the library so that the child can decompress. It helps them
yeah,
to decompress, and it's good to set it up with some books, some a carpet, maybe a beanbag chair or something like that, so the child could just decompress and get back to feeling where they need to feel so they can go back into the classroom. I think this is one of the most important first steps when you have a child that has a meltdown in the classroom, because the same time you want to make the child feel better, you also want to protect the other children from any kind of aggressive behavior happening. You don't
yeah,
want the child to hit a child, bite a child, scratch a child, or something like that. So I think one of the most important things is when you see that, if you can even get it before you see that it's going to happen, and you get it before it happens, before the child explodes, that's even better. You can say, are you feeling okay? Do you need a break? And let them to go to the quiet corner. At
yeah,
the same time, we want the child to be having therapy on how to deal with these emotional outbursts, because there's lots of techniques that they can learn to learn how to deal with this behavior, how to channel it in other ways. So at the same
yes.
time, the child needs to be getting ABA or CPT, to help them to deal with these types of behaviors.
Yeah, and these interventions are very important for them, especially in the long term as the
Yeah,
child grows old.
yeah, yeah. Very, very important. Um, let me see. Did that one. What role do visual supports play in helping children with Asperger's or ADHD succeed?
Okay. Visuals are very important because most ADHD and Asperger's are visual learners.
Yeah.
And that's why they need visual aids. Like in most cases, I tell the parents always have a whiteboard at home where the child can put his schedule and everybody in the family can see it so that they can be reminded of what they need to do. If, for example, it's already at certain time and there's no check yet, they can remind. And also, these also visual aids are very important for them to help them be organized because
Yeah.
one of the struggles of them is also organizing. So it will help them have that more predictable day or predictable plans, especially for Asperger's, because they're very particular with expectations they
Mhm.
have of themselves and of others. And so
Yeah.
these are the important uh, things that
Mhm.
help Asperger's and ADHD when it comes to organizing and when it comes to keeping track of their activity. Although in some instances, because the list can be very, very long for
Mhm.
ADHD children, sometimes it can be very boring
Yeah.
because it's so repetitive. I have
Yeah.
one case where she was complaining, no, I'm not able to do some of the work. Why? Because it's so boring. I just write the same thing over and over again. So sabi,
Yeah.
I told her, okay, so what can we do to make it more interesting for you? Would it be helpful if we make it into, like, for example, three big tasks for the day? And the others you don't need to write. Like, for example, if every day the routine already is you take a bath at this time and everything, what you will only write are the three things that you will do differently today. Like, for example, I have to do a project for this project I have to do it uh, at this particular time for this time frame, and then done if it is not done at that particular time, then she can take a break and plan it ahead to finish it, and then do another two things. The other two things can be, one is, what is an important task that you are required to do? Okay. Number two, what is the task that you would uh, be interested to do? And the last one is, what is one task that will make you happy for the day? By having those three, the child will be able to plan and be more exciting and not feel boring on the schedules that she will do every day. Even though,
Mhm.
and she will be able to have a change of it, we will be able to have a flow or different flow because it will
Mhm.
depend on her mood. What would be the mood for today? What do I want to do today? That will help also her to be able to be consistent, be empowered because she's able to finish a task, be able to
Mhm.
that, appreciate herself for being able to do three big things and
Mhm.
be inspired because the last thing she will do is the thing that made her happy today. So there's something to look forward to at the end of the day that would make her happy. It's not going to be too tiring for her or for the
Yeah.
child.
Yeah. Another thing is like for visual schedules in the classroom, because especially for children with Asperger's and autism, um, they have the visual schedule in front of them, so they know what to expect through the day. So there is no surprises, and there's less chance of a meltdown, because when
Yep.
they have surprises, that's when meltdowns occur, because they are very routineistic. They want everything by routine. So when they have that visual schedule, with them at school, they can see at 8 o'clock, we have the national anthem. This time is going to be math. This time is going to be art. This is going to be PE. So they have that schedule. So it's like the transitions, number one, will be easier, so they'll know they need to transition from, say, the PE to the math class. So it's going to
Yeah.
make it a lot easier for them to transition when they have a visual schedule. With people with autism, I mean, not autism, with ADHD, things that I recommend a lot is, um, I would say, especially kids 10 and up, is they put tasks into five. So the first five they need to do in the morning, making the easiest tasks first. The reason is, if they put the hardest tasks, they can't move on to the second task, right? So we want them to start doing the easiest task first. Then they move on to the next easiest, and the next easiest, and then the hardest. And then, then after they finish those five tasks, they go down and they put another five tasks, the same system. We're working with the easiest tasks first up to the hardest. So this actually, it gives them motivation. It gives them motivation to
Yes.
move on, further, to do more tasks. Oh, I completed this five and I completed this five. Now let me see if I can motivate myself to go to the next five. This
Yeah.
works extremely well for adults, and it also works for, like I said, kids from 10 years and up. It works, extremely well. I have found this technique that it really helps with the motivation.
Yes, and motivation is very important, especially for ADHD kids, because
Yeah,
of their impulsivity and their inattention. They have this mindset that I can't finish a thing because I
yeah,
can't focus.
yeah, right, exactly. Um, okay. What are some of the best ways to help children with Asperger's build social relationships with peers?
Okay, for peers, it would be very good, especially for young kids, is to have play dates,
Yes, play dates.
exposing
Yeah.
them to play dates, because it opens their curiosity to interact, especially when they see other kids are interacting with each other. It's the curiosity to, as they observe, because they're very observant. They observe, but
Mhm.
they don't understand. So by
Right.
just observing them, they will be able to, in the long run, if this is consistently done, because consistent exposure will help them process it in the long run.
Yeah.
And that's
Right.
how, because the brain of ADHD and Asperger's or autism, they they learn through patterns. So everything
Right.
has to be patterned. That's
Modular.
why everything
Yeah.
is repetitive. So if
Yeah.
you continuously expose the child to play date, to social gatherings where they can interact with other kids, then they would learn how to adjust to other kids, like what they're being taught in therapy, like taking turns or waiting for their
Hmm.
turns, and also giving them the opportunity to learn to help other kids. When they see that they need help, they can learn how to help other kids
Right.
that also need support. So these are the very important things to consider when it comes to helping your child build peers. In my case with my kids, when they were growing up, they would always have play date in the afternoon of the Friday, so that other kids would come, and then we would do a structured play date where there would be doing, like, they would cook first or bake before they do a structured play, before they go
Hmm.
to a free play. So parents need to also be taught how to do play date in their home and how to do structured play date for their kids, so that the pattern or the routine is still there. The predictability of the activities are still there.
Yeah. Play dates is probably one of the best ways. I mean, in my opinion, they learn from how other children act. Even us as parents, we can sit down with our kids and play with them to show them. So, for example, they like the wheels of the car instead of the car. We can sit down with them and show them how the car needs to be pushed or moved, and we drive it along the road and things like that. So play, I think play is the most important for these kids because they learn social interaction through play. They learn how to feel sorry for someone through play. They learn all of these types of emotions through play. A lot of kids with Asperger's especially have trouble with the emotional part. So they learn this through play. For example, when the child is playing with a doll, and she pretends that the doll starts crying, and she goes, "Oh baby, oh baby, oh baby," like she's the mother trying to get the child to stop crying. So another child will learn from that, so they learn that empathy also through play dates and through a modeling.
Yeah, it's important for modeling. Modeling is another part of how they will learn social cues, especially at home, in the home setting.
Yeah. Yes, yes. Okay. How can a school support emotional regulation for a child with ADHD?
For emotional regulation for kids with ADHD, since they are more triggered by the environment, so the there should be an identification of what triggers the
Yeah,
overwhelm of the child. By being able to uh, identify the triggers, then it can be prevented, or if it ever happens, the child can be taught how to self-soothe himself when he is
yeah.
already feeling uncomfortable, not waiting
Hmm.
for the meltdown to happen. So these can be helpful tools for the child and the teacher themselves by helping them to identify, like for example, they see that the child is already doing this or already having expressions of impatience. Then they
Yeah,
can easily ask the child, is there anything wrong that's bothering you, so that it uh, can be easily catched and
yeah,
intervened.
yeah. Like we said, the moving over to a quiet corner or something that
Mhm.
like that also that helps a lot with self-regulation.
Yes.
Okay. Blah, blah, blah. What strategies can help children with Asperger's feel more included in group activities?
Okay. For Asperger's, they have the tendency to talk a lot, especially if they are interested on the topic, that they forget to allow other people to talk and contribute. So for this one, in a group setting, it would be helpful for them so that they would be given a chance to contribute or to talk, but then given also the prompts that, okay, it's now the turn of the other classmate to speak, to get their inputs. So
Hmm.
this group setting will be helpful for them also to learn also how to lead. Like if they're given a chance to lead a small group, then they would be able to also learn how to give support to others, how to listen to others, or how to uh, how to coordinate with others and
Yeah,
cooperate in order to
yeah,
finish a project. And with continuous exposure to small group activities, they will eventually learn the pattern of behaviors that is expected of them.
right. Through the other kids. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Okay. Um, How do you address bullying or exclusion in children with Asperger's or ADHD in schools?
Okay, for the school setup, what is usually done for this, because it's very common, the bullying and everything, is
Hmm.
first of all, in the classroom setting, is educating the kids, okay,
Right.
educating the whole class about these kinds of conditions, especially if they have a classmate who has that condition. Okay,
Hmm.
another thing that can be done is having giving the child a school buddy, a school
Yes, yes,
buddy
yeah.
who will be helpful to for the child to be protected from bullies. And if there
Hmm.
are some who would be bullying the child, it would easily be reported so that there would be intervention. So
Right,
those are
right.
the two things that I find effective in the school setting. Orientation and orientation of the class about
Hmm.
conditions such as this, especially for them to understand, okay, when this classmate of yours is doing this, then we have to do this. So it's
Yeah.
orienting the class also on how to understand the behavior of their classmate.
Yeah, yeah, that's another, and parents and teachers need to also collaborate with each other when they
Yes.
understand that a child is being bullied. Not for the parent to come and bully the teacher, or the teacher to jump out at the parent and say, no, this never happened in my class. It's also being truthful with each other so that you can
Yes.
solve the issue, so that the issue can be solved and not be pulling against each other. So it's very
Mhm.
important also when there's a bullying situation that the parents actually and the teacher collaborate with each other. It's really and really important, because if they're fighting with each other about it, and the parents saying it happened in your class and the teacher saying no, it didn't happen, and things like this, we can't come to a resolution.
Yes, and it's important, especially so that the teacher and the parents, if there's honesty and transparency in both the parents and the teachers, they would be able to monitor the child also for signs of mental struggles of the child because
Right.
of the bullying, which is very,
Yes.
very important because Asperger's children are usually they want to isolate themselves, and because of
Hmm.
this isolation coping, they
Hmm.
they it's hard to see or to identify when they are already having mental challenges. And that's
Yeah.
why parents and teachers need to work together so that they can both observe the child, not just address the bullying, but observe the
Mhm.
child for the effects of the bullying so that the child will not suffer even further.
Yes, yes, exactly. Um, okay. What role do extracurricular activities play in helping children with Asperger's or ADHD?
It plays a very, very big role.
Mm,
Actually, that's where they thrive.
yes, I
These
agree.
kids, they thrive in that. Why? Three things. In extracurricular activities, they choose their interests, their field of interests. And when
Hmm.
they are interested in that, they 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 are able to excel in it. And when they excel in it, their confidence and their self-esteem is boosted.
Yes.
That's why most of them, especially for ADHD children who has that mentality that I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I don't finish anything, when they are engaged in extracurricular activities where that is in their full interest, they
They
feel
thrive.
they thrive, they feel validated, they feel that they are being given the opportunity to excel. So these are the
Hmm.
advantages of letting kids engage in extracurricular activities. Because if there's
Yeah.
one thing, this also helps the child in their mental wellness,
Yes. Yes.
in
Exactly.
coping
It
with their
helps.
mental wellness. Yes.
Yeah. You know, I think it's really important that they get into extra activities that they really enjoy, whether it be karate, cooking, whatever that they enjoy, because it helps, like you said, it helps their mental health. And it's something they thrive with. So it helps their self-esteem as well. So
Yes.
I think it's really important that if there is something that they enjoy, let them to be, involved in these types of activities.
Yeah.
Um, what tools or techniques can support students with Asperger's in staying organized?
In staying organized, well, two things. They can have lists, their task list, or they can use tools or apps like the Google Calendar, the reminders, and this will help them be more organized. They will be able to see what they expect from themselves to finish for the day. So
Mm-hmm.
expectations, so that they will not have overwhelm or frustrations. Number two, it's about helping them to organize their thoughts as well, because as they
Yeah.
organize their schedule, they're organizing their thoughts. And
Mm.
lastly, to help in their critical thinking, because they will have to think which is the priority task for the day. How can I make my schedule more productive for the day? Which task do I need to pause? Which task do I need to prioritize? So these three are being addressed when they are being taught these organizational tools like the list and the apps.
Yeah. Yeah. The organization tools are really a must for anybody with ADHD, whether they're a child or whether they're an adult. Okay. Um, what kind of activities or tools help children with Asperger's or ADHD improve executive functioning?
For executive functioning, throughout the years that I'm doing intervention, I've seen four categories that they need for executive functioning. Okay. Number one is structure. Why do you need structure? Structure means these are the checklists, these are the planners, these are the alarms, the reminders, because this gives them a sense of predictability and expectations. Number two is concept. What are these concepts? These are the tasks that they need to break. These are the tasks that they need to do one task at a time, because
Yeah.
if you give them several tasks, they will not be
They,
able to
no,
finish it. So
they can't do it.
they can only focus on one concept, one task at a time. Number three is space. What do I mean by space? This is both the mental space and the physical space. When you say physical space, they should be given a delegated space of their own, for them
Mm-hmm.
to be able to set the space in the way that they are comfortable, in the way that they want to, that they can function very well there, because the space, physical space, affects their mental space.
Right,
So
right.
the mental space, if their space is organized, that's why some of them, they're very sensitive of others touching their things. They
Yes,
know
yes.
when somebody took something from their table.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, like for me, I have ADHD and I have my desk. And, for me, it works. But I can tell if something has been moved. And my dad was the same way. His desk would be messy, but he would know exactly where he put a paper under that mess. And go when he would go and he would pull out that paper, he knew exactly where it was. And it's been moved. He knows it's been moved. Who's been at my desk? This paper is moved, you know? So, yeah, it might be what you could say organized messiness, where,
Yes.
organized to them. Maybe it's not organized to me or organized to you, but it's organized to them, and they know exactly where everything is.
Yeah, that's why space is very important also in the aspect of executive functioning. And lastly, the fourth is consistency. Again, they process through patterns and repetitive behaviors. So there should
Hmm.
be consistency and flow. That's why
Yes.
I remember the flow state. They have to go in that flow state. And in order for them to have that flow state, there should be predictability in everything. There
Be
should be
consistent.
a good flow in the expectations that they have for themselves to accomplish for the day. So these are the four foundations of for executive functioning that I have discovered over the years that I've been doing intervention. Again, the structure, which are the checklist, the planner, the alarms, and the notes and everything. Two is the
Hmm.
concept, one task at a time because they cannot process multiple. And three is the space so that they would have an organized space and mind also. And number four is consistency so that there would be predictability and there would be prevention of overwhelm or hypersensitivity.
Yes, yes. Okay. Are there any specific strategies for improving transitions between activities to another for children with Asperger's?
Okay. As mentioned earlier, in the classroom, there should be a list of what are the subjects for today, what
And what
time is the
expected?
subjects, what is expected of you, whether you're going to have a group activity or you're going to do the activity in the laboratory if it is a science subject, so that that
Mhm,
way the child knows what is expected for the day and what is
mhm,
expected of him, what is he
mhm.
supposed to do, because the overwhelm comes in when there is unpredictability. So
Right, right.
the sensory sensitivity becomes activated and they get
Yes. Yeah.
overwhelmed.
Yeah. Because if they don't have that visual, they'll get surprises, and then surprises will cause meltdowns. So if they know there's going to be a transition, there's no surprises there. So it's
Yeah,
easy for them to transition from one activity to the other.
yeah.
Okay. How can teachers work effectively with parents of children with Asperger's or ADHD? Communication.
Okay, okay. When it comes to parents and teachers, as we said earlier, they need to work together. And
Hmm.
what do we mean by this? The parents should be the advocate of the child regarding what is the therapy that is being received by the child, because and
Hmm.
identify the therapy is for these challenges of my child. Now,
Hmm.
by doing so, the parent and the teacher would be able to see what adjustments and accommodations can be done in the with the child to support the child so that the therapy that's being given to the child will have a continuity or a continuity of care both in the home and the school,
Hmm.
especially on the discipline. The discipline
Right.
is where usually there's an incongruency. So,
Hmm.
as I always remind parents, whatever the discipline in the therapy should be the discipline in the home and the discipline in school. Meaning, if it is a no, it's a no. If it is a yes, it's a yes. There's no maybe.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It should be yes
And
or no, and that's it. Yeah.
and there should be a follow through. It cannot be, oh, daddy said yes, but no, the mommy will say no. Because the child, this will create confusion on the child.
Hmm.
So when it
This,
comes especially on the discipline, there should be alignment to all three areas.
I think this is one area where parents struggle a lot is the follow through and
Yeah.
being consistent. These are the two areas that I think that parents they struggle. It's not like they want to fail at it, but it's a
Mhm.
struggle for them because you know as a mother, and I know as a mother, and you say no to something, you punish your child. The child is crying and upset, and you want to hug that child and say, "Okay, okay, it's okay. Go ahead and have your ice cream." or whatever. But this is, I feel, where a lot of parents tend to struggle, So it's just a matter of, trying harder, trying
Yeah.
harder. If you feel the one time, keep going until you get consistent, until you can say yes or no, and stop with the maybe. So it's just a matter of just pushing yourself through it, and you have to push yourself through it until you learn consistency and you learn how to be consistent with your child.
Actually, one of the things that I recommend for the dynamics in the home, because it comes from the dynamics of the parents, of the
Mm-hmm.
father and the mother. So that there would be a harmonious dynamics or a smooth dynamics, what I do for families is that I ask the parents to identify what is their role in the family and in the child's life. Like for example, who is the authority in the house? That
House,
way
yeah.
the child will know who to ask permission to, who to ask when it comes to house rules, who he or she should follow. And this will also help, like for example, if the mother is the nurturer, if the role that she will play is the nurturer, okay, these are the limitations and the scope of your responsibility. That way,
Hmm.
the mother will not interfere in the discipline of the father.
Yeah,
That's why,
yeah,
so it really depends on the dynamics in the home. If there is no dynamics, that's where the discipline becomes more confusing for the child. And that's where the child struggles on, especially the Asperger's children, because they don't know social cues. So the more that they will struggle on this area. So the workaround that I do for families for that part is I ask the parents to identify what is your role, what role do you want to play in the home and in the life of your child, so that there would be designation, there will be no overlapping of responsibilities for both parents in terms of playing their role in the life of their child with needs, especially those with needs.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, because the parents actually need to know which role they're playing, so the child knows who to go to for each
Yeah.
different concern that they have. Um,
Yes.
what information should teachers share with specialists to better support children's learning needs?
Okay. When it comes to that, the teachers should share both the progress and the challenges of the child in school. Why do they need to report both? So that the therapist would know if the intervention that they're giving is becoming effective and it's
Mm.
making the child progress. And if there are challenges, then they could put it in their next goal setting for the therapy for the child, so that when the challenges goes to the therapist for intervention, then the child would be able to have the right support that he needs, that when the child goes back to school, he will be able to cope better, especially if there's a clear communication or close communication between the teacher and the therapist.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Um, wh- how can schools create a supportive environment for children with Asperger's or ADHD?
Two things. Number one is creating awareness in the school
Yeah,
for all the students to be aware of how to respond and understand kids with needs, especially
and
in their
respect,
classroom. Yes,
and
and
respect.
respect their rights also. Then number two is providing accommodations. Like for example, if the child is sensitive to noise, they can give accommodation on noise canceling headphones during class hours. Or if they
Mhm.
need to be, if they are easily distracted for ADHD children, they can be seated in front so that there would be less distractions and things like that. Or if the child is having a issue on hyperactivity or always standing up, they can do two things: give them a standing desk or give them a weighted blanket so that they would be reminded that they have to sit for the whole duration of the class. So see, these are some of the accommodations that are given, and also they can be given an assigned guidance counselor
Yeah.
or a school buddy, either a study buddy or a student buddy. When you say study buddy, this is a partner for follow-ups on academic homeworks, of tests and everything. It's but the school buddy would be somebody who would be consistently a companion around the school, in the school premise.
Yeah, yeah. No, these are all good ideas, especially the school buddy, because they get them, used to the atmosphere. They can introduce them to friends, this
Mhm.
type of thing. Um, what does an IEP do for students, or how does it help students with Asperger's or ADHD?
Well, IEP, especially when they are in higher education, is very helpful, especially for those transitioning to college,
Mm-hmm.
because there are many kids with ADHD and Asperger's who comes from small group school or SPED
Mm-hmm.
school. And when they go to higher education, they need to have that transition period. And to help them in that transition period, they need an IEP. And what
Yeah.
IEP does is that they provide the accommodations for the child. They
Mm-hmm.
provide the right wellness support for the child mentally, which is the
Mm-hmm.
guidance counselor and the mental wellness manager. And they
Mm-hmm.
also provide also activities, like for example, once a month there would be group group activity for all the IEP students, for them to
Mm-hmm.
interact, get to know each other and socialize. And
Mm-hmm.
also they are given a school buddy for them to
Yeah.
feel comfortable wherever they go in the premise of the school, especially when they are transitioning, and where
Mm-hmm.
so that they will feel safe. The
Yeah.
concept of a school body is for them to feel safe, at least
Mm-hmm.
that small space of another person with me, for me to feel safe in that school where where everything is unpredictable, where everything is new. Because
Mm-hmm.
again, they function very well if there's predictability and there's clear
Mm-hmm.
expectations.
Yeah. Yes. And the last question is, how can teachers ensure their classroom is inclusive for students with these conditions?
For that one, most of the schools right now are giving orientations. They are giving
Mm-hmm.
orientations to students and
Mm-hmm.
also to parents. It's not just to students, but also to parents about
Mm-hmm.
inclusivity, about how to understand kids with needs also. And another thing that they can do to provide inclusivity is that engaging the child in small group projects, small group class, or small group discussions. This would
Mm-hmm.
help the child to feel included in a group, or and
Mm-hmm.
also by giving them a reward system or
Yeah.
validation whenever they do something good in class, or they achieve
Mm-hmm.
something, they celebrate it with the child. That's also another thing to make the child, the concept of this, or the goal of inclusivity in class, is for the child to feel that they are in a safe space.
Yeah.
So that's really the goal, for them to feel that they are in a safe space, so that they will not feel overwhelmed, they will not feel misunderstood, they will not feel judged or criticized. And
Yeah.
so these things, orientation, giving them the, again, the reading of the class rules each time for all the students, so that the child will not feel that he or she is being singled out for the reminders.
Yes, yeah. All of these are actually really good ideas. And like, we said there's other ideas that parents, can come up with, like play dates and such to help their kids feel included. Um, the teacher in the class, the small group activities, and even at playtime, find activities that kids can do in a small group and assign the groups. This helps build that inclusivity for kids with challenges.
Yes.
Well, thank you for joining us today. I enjoyed our chat, and hopefully we will have you on again soon. And until
Sure.
next time, yeah, until next time, next Tuesday, everybody, we'll see you in the next video.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.